Guys, welcome to the Caring for Creatures show. It's great to be with you on a Thursday. Thank you kindly for joining us on the I Love Seaville Network. An absolute pleasure to connect with you guys on this platform. Fantastic program lined up. We have Ed Clark in the house. Ed is a wildlife extraordinaire. This guy loves animals across the board.
He has a wildlife also, yes.
And he may have a wildlife. We won't be talking about that part, but we will be talking about the animal piece. This show celebrates, ladies and gentlemen, caring for creatures for more than 30 years. One sanctuary in Central Virginia, Mary Birkholz's sanctuary, caring for creatures to save the lives of the most at-risk animals across the eastern seaboard and giving them a second shot, sometimes a third or fourth shot at life in Fluvanna County. We love, love, love caring for creatures. I thank Harris Tolber, who is our director. Let's go to the two-shot of Mary and I, and let's welcome Mary to the show. Hello, Mary.
Hey, Jerry.
How are you?
Happy Thursday. I'm great.
Happy Thursday to you as well. I'm looking forward to this show. Before we get to Ed Clark and the Wildlife Center of Virginia, we recap the week that was at Caring for Creatures, Mary.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start out, as always, by thanking our wonderful sponsors, Happy Tales from Palmyra, Charlottesville Veterinary Hospital, which, as a reminder, is doing a summer food drive for Caring for Creatures and the Fluvanna SPCA. So take any donated food items that you'd like to give over to the hospital. They'll make sure that both of us get those. Pet Supplies Plus, also in Charlottesville, they have a special going on. Redford Naturals, dry dog and cat food. If you buy at least a 5-pound bag of either dry cat or dog food donated to Caring for Creatures, the rest of your order, you get 10% off. So
I love it.
It's a deal. It's a deal, and the CFC animals win as well. Match Made in Heaven. Match Made in Heaven. We have a $10,000 matching gift campaign ongoing right now, and it goes through July 20th. So your dollars will make a big difference. We urge you to, if you have not already donated to the campaign, help us out. And you'll see a lot of little beings soon in some pictures that'll be benefiting from your help. It's kitten season, and it's exploded a little bit anyway, so the matching gift is a perfect time to help us help them. July, we have some things going on in July. Brasserie Saison Restaurant on the downtown mall. Their Sunday brunch. We are getting percentage of the Sunday brunch sales every Sunday in July. So put that on your calendar. Take your sweetie to brunch and help the animals as well. So
the Dual Chef Showdown.
And that's the 22nd of July. So that's over at the Tin Whistle, and that is really, really a fun happening if you've not been there. And I experienced that and was like amazed. I felt like I was on the HGTV show, you know, the food shows.
The Food Network.
The Food Network, that's what it is.
Yeah.
The Food Network, yeah, where they do those competitions.
Where you're VIP.
It was really fun, yeah, so you get to vote. So anyway, I want to show you a bunch of beautiful kittens. I'm featuring only kittens today because we have more than enough to go around. And Harris, you can just sort of scroll through them. He's putting them on, okay. I'll just call out Spike and Sarah. Were born April 20th. Haley, Jordan, Trudy, Dakota, Maggie, born May 4th. Their mom was a feral kitty, and her last litter, the folks told us, the fox got them. So they tried to catch these and get them out of harm's way. So they're all tamed up. They're really ready to roll. Layla, Eva, and Hermione, born on the 27th of April. I have a litter of babies in my office. Tasha gave birth on June 15th. We put them everywhere and anywhere. She had 6 babies on the 15th. And just Wednesday, we had 6 kittens that had been caught over at the Fluvanna High School area that perhaps somebody dumped over there. They're about 8 to 10 weeks old, so newcomers. If you'd be interested in fostering kitties, give the office a call or send us an email through our website. We can use some more fosters. So that would be a huge help.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Guys, we have included a link on 3 of the 7 channels we're broadcasting on. and it's a link to donating to Caring for Creatures. Caring for Creatures, like we've said, is Central Virginia's first no-kill animal sanctuary. The link is in the chat box. Click the link. Make a donation to Caring for Creatures. This organization needs a sizable amount of money each day to keep its operations going, and your donations help keep the animals happy and maintaining their quality of life. Check out the link in the comments box. We'll get to Ed Clark here in a matter of moments. In fact, why don't we let the star of our show, Mary Birkholz, introduce our guest.
Okay, Ed Clark. I'm in awe of Ed Clark. I love what he does. Everybody knows the Wildlife Center, and Lord knows we have given your number out on any number of occasions because we get lots of calls from people. We have utilized your services. We've had to free a couple of owls that flew into barbed wire fencing and got caught, and got them into carriers, and the fine transport system that's set up to and from or to the Wildlife Center helped. Today you're going to learn a lot about the Wildlife Center, what they do. At some point, I hope Ed has brought at least one interesting story of his. He's probably got 4,000 of them.
I would think he does.
I think he does. Yeah, he's got bullet holes in his computer, I'm telling you. No, I'm kidding.
He really does.
He does, yeah, you should see that. Anyway, so I present to you Ed Clark. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Well, Mary, thank you. Jerry, thank you for the hospitality, and it's nice to be here and to have learned about your program. I've watched it now a couple of times, and I'm very honored to be a guest with you today and tell you about the Wildlife Center of Virginia. Interestingly enough, we are coming up on 37 years of operation. We were founded in 1982.
Impressive.
And we were founded primarily, as are a lot of other animal care organizations, to meet a local need in the Shenandoah Valley. In fact, our original name was the Shenandoah Valley Wildlife Treatment and Rehabilitation Center, a name that lived in absolutely no one's memory. So in '85, we changed it to Wildlife Center of Virginia. But a lot of folks know a little bit about the Wildlife Center, and they've heard that little bit so many times they think that's the whole story. But I like to characterize the Wildlife Center as being a little like an iceberg. Because out on the ocean, you can see a large iceberg, but the truth is what you're seeing is only 10% of what's there. The majority is out of view. And the same is really true with the Wildlife Center. You know, folks know that we receive injured, orphaned, displaced, diseased wild animals, give them state-of-the-art care, and try to return them to the wild, able to function normally in an appropriate habitat. I mean, that's the come-in-the-door speech. But what a lot of folks don't know is that we are actually one of the largest teaching hospitals for wildlife medicine in the world. So we train fourth-year veterinary students from every single vet school in the United States and Canada, and students and professionals from about 40 other countries that come to the Wildlife Center, and we're talking every corner of the world, to learn to apply the general skills of veterinary medicine to the very specialized world of wildlife and conservation medicine. We subscribe very enthusiastically to the school of thought or the perspective on our discipline called One Health, and it's an approach that links in environmental health, human health, and animal health as inextricably joined, and one leads to implications for the other. And so when we approach a problem with our animals, we are first and foremost trying to alleviate the suffering of that individual, but each of those patients provides us with a window on the environment. And indeed, we look at each one of these animals as an opportunity to learn something about, not only about the species, but about what's affecting the species in the wild. And over the years, we've been involved in some major national issues, including pesticides. When we first got started, the very first bald eagle we ever received as a patient back in 1985 had been poisoned by a very popular agricultural pesticide, insecticide. We found out in the course of researching this chemical that it had been brought onto the market illegally, and that it was known to be unsafe in any application. And as a result of that gateway patient, we undertook an effort to get first the state of Virginia and then the federal government to really take a hard look at it and put it through the appropriate testing that it had managed to circumvent in its original registration. And as it turned out, according to EPA's own documents, they knew this chemical was killing 2 million birds a year in the United States when used according to the label. And that's just not acceptable.
Wow.
No.
And so as a result of using that one bald eagle story, and we saved the bald eagle, by the way, and released him, but that gave us the platform to undertake the public policy struggle that eventually got that chemical banned for all uses in the United States. And that was
Great.
about,
Wow.
it was about 23, 24 years ago. And because of thoroughly investigating what had happened to that one patient,
Right.
we've now prevented over 54 million birds
Wow.
from dying from the same
Wow.
cause. And that feels pretty
Probably
good, I
some
have to say.
humans too, you know.
Well, actually, it was a very, very serious threat to farmers,
Yeah.
particularly through dermal absorption. And but that's just one example. There certainly are many others. But in looking at what distinguishes the Wildlife Center, we refer to ourselves not as a wildlife rehabilitation center. We do some wildlife rehabilitation there, absolutely, and we have rehabilitators on our staff, but we are a teaching and research hospital. So we use these clinical cases as an opportunity to figure out how to help animals on an individual basis that will hopefully lead us to being able to address wildlife health issues on a landscape basis, and certainly to examine public policy as it relates to the relevant factors. And again, that has led us into some pretty momentous struggles, but we really feel like this approach has been successful. We have trained in our facility well over 1,000 wildlife veterinarians, and as I say, they've come from more than 40 countries. And they are now at work in agencies, in institutions, in universities, in private centers, not only across North America, but quite literally around the world.
Turn that into the first
Yeah,
sizzle
I
reel.
was gonna
That was
say, that's
amazing.
great.
Right there. So a sizzle reel is a highlight clip we take from the show.
Cool.
We
Yeah.
make it into an approachable, shorter, digestible clip. It was a perfect snapshot.
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks watching right now that are giving
Excellent.
you messages. I'm going to relay it to everybody. Carrie Scott, I'm looking forward to this. Carrie Scott also says, nothing can compare to the Wildlife Center of Virginia, the best care and dedication to wildlife anywhere. Michelle Bridges, thank you for all you do. Kyle Dvorak, thank you for what you're doing for caring for creatures and for animals across the board. Jean Allen says, I'm so looking forward to this. Susan, your friend in Connecticut, is watching. She says, hi, Mary, I love your show and all the good work you do for the community. If you would like to offer a comment or share some perspective to the show, put it in the chat box on any of the channels that you're watching, and we will relay it to the panel here. I have a question for Ed. I'm curious of how you spend your day. How it's broken up, policy, admin, operations, dictating vision and pace.
Well, I spend a lot of time thinking deep thoughts, but truly, no 2 days are the same. It surprises people to know that one of the things I consider to be a critical part of my job is I personally sign every single thank you letter we send to our donors, and there are days when that policy seems brighter than others, but we take very, very seriously the position that when someone donates to our organization, we don't consider it to become our money. We still treat it as if it's the donor's money that has simply been entrusted to us to use as the donor wishes to achieve our mission. And that's paid off quite a bit over the years, but on any given day, I probably am engaged in some discussions about internal things. Mostly, I'm just trying to keep up with folks outside the organization. My real responsibilities are facing outward from the organization, working with our state and federal agencies, working with our donors, with our friends, our followers, working with our outreach department on public education, doing things like this, although this is a special day. But it really is a blessing to have been there so long and to have truly a world-class team of professionals. I told someone the other day that I want them to send me emails from time to time so that I can look busy, because truly I have colleagues that I'd put up against any team anywhere in the world, and when people will occasionally ask, does Ed still work at the Wildlife Center? Their response is often, well, not very much. You know?
We have a question from Jorge Caro and a comment. He says, greetings, Ed, and a hug from Colombia.
He's one of the most famous wildlife veterinarians in Colombia and one of our close collaborators.
Wonderful.
He says the wildlife organization has been a great support for the conservation of some of our ecosystems. Vicki Vaughn, I had my wildlife rehabilitator training at the WCA. I am so grateful for all that Ed Clark and his staff have done, not only for me, but what he does for wildlife in need. Carrie Scott, I can confirm that those personally signed letters, it stunned me the first time one arrived, and it still stuns me today. I've learned so much from you, and it means a lot to me of what you are doing for this organization. Mary, this is amazing right here.
Yeah.
Well, and
I told you.
Carrie,
Yeah.
The guy's awesome.
amazing. Come
The
on.
wildlife, that's awesome too. Yes,
Jorge
absolutely.
is in Medellin, Colombia. Carrie Scott is in Canada. So, yeah, we have friends and supporters worldwide.
And they've all been to the Virginia
Yes, they have.
Center
They
for
sure have.
training or learning. So with climate, a huge issue right now, especially
Absolutely.
with the election. Do you have a lot of potential candidates or real candidates
become president,
contact
or-
you? Yeah.
That's a good question.
Do they seek your?
Well, unfortunately, all too
counsel?
many people in political life across the full spectrum speaking cliches, and they're not really interested in a deep-seated understanding of
yeah.
a lot of issues. Although I will have to say, as surprising as it will be for some people, the recently retired congressman from the 6th District, Bob Goodlatte, was chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He's an avowed partisan, but he also is an avowed supporter of the Wildlife Center of Virginia, and has been there many, many times, always been great at helping us, and he actually brought his family one day, and he'd been there so many times, he gave the tour. So, we think of ourselves as nonpartisan. The environment is too important to be fought over in a political arena. And yet we are seeing real differences as a result of climate change. I mean, as an example, when we first started the Wildlife Center in the early 80s, when people would ask us, when are white-tailed deer fawns born? The stock answer was middle of June to middle of July. Well, as our winters have become more and more mild, and things have changed so much, we're now seeing fawns on the ground in April, and newborn fawns coming as late as the middle of September, which is just really messing up a lot of things, causing a lot of them to end up in distress. And we've seen, I think I read this morning in one of our internal communications, a 42% increase in intake at the Wildlife Center this year over last.
Wow.
And why, I don't know, but certainly we're seeing migratory patterns of birds change quite a bit. Having a hummingbird hanging out in the middle of December is just not normal.
Something weird there,
But
yeah.
the weather is a strong indicator for them. So, as we get into these things, I mean, part of what we're trying to do through telling the stories of our patients is to give people a deep understanding of how personal decisions they make, the simple little things, can really affect wildlife, can affect the environment, and how making a decision to just do one little thing right can have a profound consequence. And certainly the story that I've told countless times over the years, and now I have other people telling me, is the analogy that I've used for the last 35 years of the apple core. You're driving in your car, you eat an apple, maybe you're drinking a soft drink. You don't throw the container for the soft drink out because obviously that's litter, but what about that apple core? It's biodegradable, you can hear the narrative in your mind. Throw it on the side of the road and some animal can come eat it. But what if the animal that smells it and is coming to eat it started off on the other side of the road? What have you just done? You have just lured that animal into harm's way and quite literally potentially dragged the entire food chain to the pavement.
I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how something
Yeah.
so simple, and I wish I had $1 for every time I've gotten that
Yeah,
reaction.
I've never thought about that.
Well,
now I feel terrible
Well,
because I'm throwing
yeah.
so many animal corpses.
well, I'll tell you, the Wildlife Center exists on contributions too. So my advice is give until you feel better.
That wasn't your first rodeo with that answer right there, Ed. That was hilarious. I got a follow-up question for you based on hers. How do you do a lot of lobbying?
Not a lot.
Okay. Does your organization?
No, I mean, I'm the one that does it,
Okay.
typically, when we do. We are very involved in policy formulation, and so a lot of what we do is behind the scenes.
Okay.
So here in Virginia, we work very closely with the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, which is our state wildlife agency. With those folks, we have wonderful collaborative relationships. We're doing research jointly. We help them with law enforcement issues and activities and things of this nature. And then even in some cases, we'll work with the General Assembly, but instead of going down and testifying in a hearing, which we do when called upon, we may work with the Bureau of Legislative Services, which actually write the bills before they are introduced. And so we have our fingers in a lot of pies, but when we do choose to get involved in lobbying, an overt lobbying situation, it's because of something that directly affects us or affects wildlife in a way that we feel deserves our intervention. Now, on many cases, we'll do things indirectly because, as you can see from our Facebook following, we have a lot of folks that like the Wildlife Center of Virginia. I have a lot of folks that follow my role in the Wildlife Center.
I see that.
And so a lot of times when we find out something's going on, not just here in Virginia, but elsewhere, we'll simply educate and inform our followers and friends and supporters how they, as citizens wishing to make a difference, can do so through the political or the legislative process. And we've definitely gotten the attention of a few state legislators when they got mad at our favorite wildlife agency and introduced a piece of legislation they thought would teach them a lesson. And it turned out the lesson was indeed taught, but it was the senator who got the message, not the state wildlife agency.
We have a lot of questions coming in, and one of them is very good. A lot of them are very good. I'd like to create a sizzle reel from this, and we start with the question. I have never thought about this. It's very intriguing. This comes from Gene Allen. Could Ed please address this question, the problem of balloon releases and how it impacts wildlife?
Oh, sure. Actually, that hits very close to home. That issue became important to me because in my younger days, I was a pretty hardcore scuba diver and got very involved in underwater photography and had a lot of dive pals here in the Charlottesville area and used to spend a lot of time in the Caribbean, and turtles were really one of my favorite photographic subjects. And turtles are killed in large numbers by balloons. I was aware of that, and it just didn't hit me until the Wildlife Center back in about 1985-ish was invited to become the wildlife exhibit for the National Boy Scout Jamboree, which brought together more than 20,000 scouts and scouters from around the world at Fort A.P. Hill up in Caroline County. And the opening ceremony, they handed out a helium balloon to every single scout, and they were all released within 10 miles of the Chesapeake Bay. And 19,000 balloons, each carrying a 3-foot-long piece of nylon kite string. And it was just so shocking. So those balloons cause damage. They come back to Earth. They will get into jet streams. I have a small cabin up in Pennsylvania and 50 acres of land. And invariably, because of where I am on the mountain, I will find mylar balloons in my woods almost every time I hike. And I know some of them are coming from Pittsburgh because I've gotten them from the Pittsburgh Zoo, things of this nature. But we were so convinced that we needed to do something about that. Actually, the General Assembly, at our behest, passed a law that now requires a permit from the Department of Environmental Protection or Environmental Quality that you're not allowed to release more than 50 balloons for any reason at any time without a state permit to do so, and that has to be for research purposes. So people don't think about it. Just,
No.
No.
and
Like the apple core.
the apple core, that
Yeah.
little piece of string that gets wrapped around the leg of a bird, too many times we have seen those victims, quite literally, of somebody's good time gone bad.
Yep.
And the balloon itself is an issue, but the string for
Yeah.
entanglement can also be really deadly because a lot of birds will pick up something like that to build their nest with it, gets wrapped around the foot of a baby, and it's a dead
That's
baby.
it, yeah.
Can't leave the nest.
You know, I've seen or read recently stories of whales and other large ocean mammals found
Right.
dead, and when they open them up, they have all of this debris.
Oh, well, and
from
it's
the
not just
ocean.
whales. Certainly
it's
that
a
is.
lot- yeah.
Whales and other marine creatures suffer terribly from plastic pollution.
Yeah.
But as bald eagles, we were speaking
Yeah.
earlier of eagles, as they are now spreading into parts of Virginia where they were not traditionally found. I mean, they of course are our nation symbol, our flagship species, but primarily they're fish-eating birds, if given their druthers. And their prime habitat was right along the Chesapeake Bay and the riparian rivers, riparian corridors of the tidal rivers in Virginia, and there was always plenty of fish. Well, when the population finally was brought back from the brink of extinction, they didn't have enough habitat into which they could return. So we're down to about 10% of that original habitat. The population's back to full size, and now we're seeing them move. Well, you were talking about having seen one in Fluvanna County.
Yep.
Just a few minutes from
Recently.
Charlottesville.
Yeah.
That's not a traditional place. These
Yeah.
are new things. There's not enough fish to support them, and as a result, they're changing their dietary habits and becoming far more dependent on food that they scavenge, on carrion. And dumps and landfills are now becoming increasingly deadly to bald eagles. We had a youngster brought in earlier this year, and the amount of plastic and styrofoam and debris that we took out of his stomach, and unfortunately on a necropsy or a post-mortem exam because he didn't survive it. We had an eagle that came in, I want to say it was just last week, and we could see on an x-ray something there in its stomach, but we couldn't get it out, and with the scope we couldn't see it. When the bird finally did not survive, we found out it was a metal cap off a beer bottle. And shiny, he picked it up, probably playing with it, swallowed it, and it quite literally capped the lower part of his stomach and killed him.
Yeah.
So those little things matter, and that's one of the ways that we like to convey our message, because people will often do things, as you know, for animals that they might not do for another person.
Exactly.
And we want them to know that that bottle cap on the ground, that balloon in the sky, that apple core out the window has victims.
Yeah.
And the person responsible for it bears the responsibility for the damage.
Absolutely.
Fabulous
That
answer.
message.
Another question. Man, we have a lot of questions coming in. Lydia Price has a question. Is she a volunteer?
She is.
She says, Ed, if you have not already done so, could you please take time to talk about the dangers of glue traps?
Yeah, well, we...
Glue traps like in for...
like people use for mice, glue boards, and
I hate those
they are horrible, horrible things, and we just there's just nothing good I can say about them. People use them for catching insects, for catching mice, and then they can take the whole thing and throw it into the garbage. Many times with the animal still alive on the trap, but they're indiscriminate killers, and they're horrible, cruel things. So we are against them 100%. And a lot of, interestingly enough, some of these questions are things that people can find on our website. We have a very, very robust website where people can not only find general information on how to help wildlife. We haven't even gotten to the fact that the Wildlife Center is featured on a new PBS weekly television series that premiered in May and is shown across Virginia on the Virginia Public Media Network in Harrisonburg, here in Charlottesville, and Richmond, but it's also available online the same night, every
I've seen it
Thursday
on your
night.
website,
And so a lot of the content of these programs is including this type of information.
I love this stuff.
Yeah.
People love
Great.
this stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
it's helpful.
It never ceases to amaze me how something like that description of an apple core
Right.
can really motivate
Yeah.
people to start thinking about the little things.
Because as humans, we're such micro thinkers and think what's in front of our face that we don't see the macro impact of what we're doing.
Well, and there's not malice behind it.
Right.
There's
I love
simply
animals.
A lack of,
Yeah.
well, that's the whole thing. And there are many times the unintended consequence can be profound. And whether it's the humane education that goes into caring for our companion animals and domestic animals, and of course we work very closely with many organizations caring for animals of all types across the spectrum. But it really all comes back to the same root. It's being aware that what you do matters and taking responsibility for the consequences of your individual actions. And it's a pretty simple lesson, and it applies to anything in life.
Exactly.
But a lot of times when we actually are able to show the true real-world victims of these innocent, thoughtless actions, it gets people's attention.
Yeah.
We're making it tangible. Is there an animal that we should be most concerned about going potentially extinct, or the numbers just dwindling and dwindling to the point potentially of no return?
Well, we are seeing, of course, we have our threatened and endangered species, which are individual species, but on a broader scale, we're seeing dramatic and shocking declines in a number of animal groups. Turtles, our box turtles, we've seen as much as a 90% reduction
Really?
in turtle populations, mostly from cars and pesticides and lawnmowers and things of this nature, all human causes. And it's tough. So when people say, oh, well, I see a turtle crossing the road, well, believe it or not, there's actually a right way and a wrong way to get that turtle out of the road. If the turtle is crossing the road, the right way to remove it from the road is take it in the direction it was going to the opposite side of the road, because it's going there for some instinct-driven cause, whether it's going to nest or find a mate or return to its home territory. And if you take it back where it came from, it's just going to turn around as soon as you drive away and go right back into the road.
Ugh, I've made that
Also,
mistake.
Yeah.
don't take it home. A box
Yeah.
turtle will live its entire life within about 1 square mile. And if they know that territory, if they're put somewhere else, they just really are quite literally lost. And the survival is not as good as it needs to be. So, again, simple little things that we like to share with people, because simply putting it on the right side of the road as opposed to taking it back to the near shoulder may honestly save its life. And it's a few more steps one way or the other.
That's fantastic.
I have another question.
Me too.
And I'm just, when we were talking earlier, I have this fascination with bears.
Okay.
A true fear of them, but a fascination with them. But when I was reading about the more recent issues that have been found with bears, sarcoptic mange, and because I relate to that, as you know, we get dogs with that and have to deal with it, but how awful it is
it's unbelievable.
with bears, and maybe you can share what's
Sure.
going on with
well,
that.
actually, I brought along a picture, if we can look for that in our archives over here. But one of the things that sets the Wildlife Center apart is we try to take the experience and insights we gain in the clinic, in the clinical care of individual animals, and generalize those to a deeper understanding of health issues with free-ranging wildlife. And in the case of sarcoptic mange in bears, very common in canids, so dogs, foxes, coyotes, very common. Raccoons get it from time to time. But it is very unusual to see it in bears. And recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, the disease has been emerging in Pennsylvania, and they've had many cases. And the mite itself is microscopic. You can't really see it with the naked eye. It burrows into the skin and quite literally begins to drink the blood of the animal. And it's a very contagious disease, and these mites are prolific. They reproduce explosively. And when we first saw a bear brought in with no hair, the picture that is there before us is the top is the bear the day that it arrived, and the picture below is after we treated this bear with a new drug that has come on the market that we are now trying out on bears, and mites are pretty easy to treat, but it takes 2 doses of medication given a couple of weeks apart. Well, that doesn't work for an animal that's still out in the forest. You can't make an appointment and have him check back in at the campground. But the new family of drugs requires only 1 treatment, and we have had really 100% success. This before and after picture is 90 days apart.
Man.
And so
Put it back on screen, Harris, the before and after. Keep it coming. Harris is our director, guys.
Yeah, this picture, when that bear came in, I still have a hard time talking about her because it was so emotional, so devastating. The poor bear was just literally in torment. And being able to alleviate that suffering, but now having created a tool that wildlife managers can use in the field. And this is the research part. This is the part the public doesn't see when they're bringing us baby squirrels. We tried it in the clinic. We evaluated it. We had, as you can see here, incredible success. We've now treated, I think, 4 bears that were seriously affected, and we know it works, and we're continuing to treat them as they come in. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that bears are still hunted in almost every state in which they're found, and when they are harvested, they're eaten. And that makes it a food animal. So we can't be telling people to go out and put drugs, and especially drugs that are toxic enough to kill mites, into animals that some person is then going to eat, unless we know exactly how long it takes for that medication to leave the system of the animal to eat. And the same is true for chickens or cows or whatever else. There, on every bottle of medication, there is a withdrawal date that says how many days before it goes to the market the drug must be stopped in order to assure that the animal is drug-free. Well, with bears, that's a little more challenging, but it's required us 3 years to do that. And then we all know what bears do in the woods. And one of the issues is when we apply that type of medication, it's eliminated through the feces. What happens when the insects in the soil break down that fecal material? Will this medicine kill them too?
Get out.
And so it's not just a simple thing about, this works, or just leave it out in the woods and the bears can eat it and we'll all go home happy. It's deep science. It's important science, but we're getting very, very good results. And our doctor who's working on this, Dr. Peach Van Wyck, is there as a postdoctoral research fellow. And if the results turn out as favorably as it looks like, bear managers in every nation of the world will have a new tool that could potentially help them very quickly bottle up a disease like this and eliminate the spread.
Do you allocate resources across the board for all wildlife, or is it preferential treatment for land versus water, or does it not matter at all?
Well, that's an interesting question. Obviously, the animals we get are almost exclusively terrestrial animals, other than water turtles or beavers or those animals that live in an aquatic environment. We don't do sea turtles. We don't do marine mammals or things of this nature, though we certainly have trained people who are doing them. We collaborate with those folks. And many times our students who are there to learn about the medicine they will need to become a zoo veterinarian, we have cooperative relationships with the National Zoo as an example. And so our students switch back and forth. We'll get National Zoo postdocs to come down and learn clinical wildlife medicine, trauma medicine. Our postdocs will then go there and learn zoo and maintenance and captive management. So we have a very comprehensive program.
We're getting questions about the dangers of lead ammo. And that eagles or animals can eat a lead fragment as tiny as a grain of rice, and how this is potentially lethal. We're having a number of questions coming in via fishing line and the hooks on fishing line,
Sure.
and the impact it has on the environment as well. Guys, we will do our best to get to all these questions right here. We have a lot of questions.
Well, I'll be glad to come back.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
you
please,
probably
yes.
should.
We will need that.
If you could,
Yeah.
not to be presumptuous there.
Yeah.
Those two topics have the most momentum right now: the lead ammo and the fishing.
Well,
line.
let's talk about the lead first, because we were talking about bald
Yeah.
eagles and the fact that they're eating things in landfills they shouldn't be eating. But during certain times of the year, especially during the hunting season, one of the things that is a sustaining part of their diet is carrion, the remains of animals that have been left in the field by hunters. And it's not for the anti-hunting followers out there. This is not malicious or negligence on the part of the hunters. This is a new issue because eagles are being found in new areas. So I've grown up in a hunting family from the time I was a little boy. I never, ever heard about this, and still very rarely see it in any of the sporting magazines because it's a relatively new issue. But it's one that's relatively easy to fix. But right now we're getting, in 2017 we admitted 55 bald eagles to the Wildlife Center. 72% of them had measurable levels of lead in their bloodstream. And the trouble is with lead, it's a heavy metal. Of course, we know it affects humans from our water systems and lead pipes and solder, but it's cumulative. The body does not have any way to eliminate it, as it might another type of a contaminant or an organic contaminant. So if you get just a tiny amount now, and a tiny amount next year, and a tiny amount the year after that, it builds up. And I use the analogy, it's like picking up a little pebble and putting it in your pocket. If you do that every day, one pebble doesn't matter. Soon you get a lump, the next thing you know, you get a limp, and the next thing you know, your pants fall down. But the cumulative effect of lead is just like this. And fortunately, there are enough of us who have kind of a foot in both camps. One of my better known secrets, and probably no longer a secret, is I'm a gun collector. And having grown up a lifelong hunter, so I'm something of a ballistics expert. I actually have a shooting range in the basement of my house. But that expertise gives me credibility where somebody who's just against all hunting, a hunter's not going to listen to that person. And so I'm able to talk about alternatives to lead ammunition, copper ammunition, some of the alloy metals for shotgun ammunition. And the problem can be 100% eliminated as we move away from traditional lead-based hunting ammunition. State of California this year has implemented a complete ban. Wow. Over a 5-year period. It becomes effective this year. So no hunter in California can legally use lead ammunition.
So does the lead that is in the adult, can that then get passed to the offspring?
No,
That doesn't.
No,
okay.
It doesn't go that way, but
Okay.
one of the problems is that it does damage sometimes very slowly to the internal organs, the nervous system, the eyes, and eventually that animal is going to succumb either primarily from the direct lead poisoning or its reflexes get slow. I mean, if you imagine that 3-martini lunch and you get behind the wheel of the car and you run into a tree and you're killed, it's not the tree that killed you.
Right.
And the same is true for a lot of these birds, like bald eagle can see a 12-inch fish a mile away. Well, how come it didn't notice that truck that just ran over?
Yeah.
And a lot of times when we look, the underlying cause is that the animal was intoxicated, but not with martinis, with lead or with pesticide or some other contaminant.
Wow.
Fascinating. Before we get to the, how we can donate, how we can get involved with your organization, I think we need to cue up Bill Sykes'
It's Bill's style. Bill's watching. Yay,
his
Bill.
photo.
Yeah.
Let's put that on screen, Harris, if we could,
Yeah.
and walk us through the photo that is going to be on screen here shortly.
Well, the Wildlife Center has been around a long time, and one of the things that is important for our fundraising is we have an annual gala that is held typically the first weekend in November. And it's very elegant, and black tie and 5-course meals and live auctions and silent auctions. People come literally from across the country to attend this thing. But some of our more beloved local friends are not going to let it pass without a joke. And the eagle head.
It's on there.
Yeah, okay, there you go. The eagle head there is a mimic of our rock star ambassador bald eagle named Buddy. Buddy came to us about 11 years ago and had a viral lesion on his beak, and so his beak grew crooked. But he's got so many followers from our streaming video. People can watch the animals. We have 3 high-resolution channels of streaming video we call Critter Cam that people watch, and one of them is focused pretty much on Buddy the bald eagle. And so this was a tribute to the many people in the room who had come to love the Wildlife Center and support us as a result of their love of this particular eagle and his human surrogate.
I think the $87 million question is, Buddy has a glass of wine in his hand. How does Buddy get the wine through the beak?
A straw.
I was going to say.
Yeah, that rubber mask didn't stay on Bill Sykes very long.
Okay. Bill, we promised you. We got it on screen right there. We got a comment coming in. Bill is Buddy, the best moment of the gala by far.
There you go.
How about the who, what, when, where, why, how we can donate, how we can get
Sure.
involved?
Well, the Wildlife Center is not your tax dollars at work. We are supported, as is Caring for Creatures, entirely by private sources of funding. We have supporters quite literally worldwide. But the easiest pathway to hook in with us is not only to like us on Facebook, Wildlife Center of Virginia, but go to our website, which is wildlifecenter.org, wildlifecenter.org, and you'll find really a gateway to information about wildlife, to activities that are going on. Among the things you'll find there when an eagle comes in that has been injured, literally daily updates will be there. You can follow the case, see what's going on, see how it's treated. When we have the opportunity to release an eagle, we try to do that whenever possible and invite the public to join us. We did one here just outside of Charlottesville last summer, and there were over 350 people showed up.
Wow.
And down in North Garden, and we released the bird down there, and it moved right back into its territory. It's where it had been found. We have had multiple eagle releases. One day back, I think it was 2011, we released 5 eagles in one day, including 2 of Buddy the rock star siblings, 3 of his siblings. We had almost 1,300 people from 22 states showed up for that event that we held at the Berkeley Plantation down near Williamsburg. So we try to make it an opportunity to join. And when people support our organization, we quite literally treat you as part of the team. You can get as much or as little information as you want. We have biweekly newsletters that are just email. We're not filling you up with junk mail or anything of this nature. But the other thing that when we release an eagle, as an example, many times we affix a transmitter to the back of the bird so that we can follow them post-release. And then every 48 hours, when this cellular-based transmitter calls in, if you will, we update that information on our website.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and it certainly, for those that have said, an animal raised in captivity is never going to survive, we shut those critics up pretty well. We've got, I think, 15 or so birds out there now wearing the transmitters. We had 2 released at Chincoteague a couple of years ago, and one of them immediately took off for Canada. And 2 or 3 weeks later was in the Maritimes, spent the summer in eastern Canada, and then came right straight back to the campground in which we had released it. That a couple of months later, and then went and did the same thing again the next year. So, it's normal behavior.
Yeah.
We're able to document it, and we're able to show that indeed, when an animal comes through our facility, it gets state-of-the-art care. When it goes back to the wild, it has every opportunity to live out its normal life, fulfill its destiny, and take its place in the ecosystem.
Love it.
I love it too.
Fabulous,
Yeah,
fabulous
absolutely.
show. This is one of my favorite comments that has come in, and this is from one of our viewers. It says, Ed's favorite line. Where there's a will, we want to be in it. Florida.
That's not the line I thought they had in mind, but that'll work for a civil audience. But
He was getting nervous there.
Well,
for a second.
and indeed, your comment about how can you get involved, one of the things that has revolutionized our capacity to grow in the last few years is people including the Wildlife Center in their estate plans, and that gives us the assurance that we're bulletproof in the economy, that we can with confidence invest in new programs that may take a while to bring online. A perfect example, we created the Wildlife Care Academy that is now available through the Wildlife Center. People interested in wildlife can take courses that if you choose to pursue a permit to enable you to care for wildlife in your home or another facility, it qualifies you for that. If you're just interested, some of the classes are natural history classes taught by our professional staff. And again, we've had people from, I think we're up to 46 states now, and this program is not 2 years old yet. And it very inexpensive, but by the end of this year, we hope to have a certification program so that people can take a predefined curriculum, and then we'll be able to be certified in basic wildlife rehabilitation skills.
I love it. Pat, last comment here, and then we'll give it to Mary to close. This is from Pat Kane. I love listening to my hero, Ed Clark. Thank you for all you do. I am so pleased to be a member of Critter Nation and to follow Ed and his staff on a daily basis. If doing a safari is on your bucket list, just hook up with our group from the Wildlife Center of Virginia. You will love the safari. And this has been a phenomenal show.
Absolutely,
Mary Birkholz.
yes. Thank you. And I knew you had this wealth of information, and I still have a list of questions
Me
that
too.
long. So we'll
And so do
save
they.
them, and so do they.
Yeah, I'm sorry we
So
could
we're
not
going to
get
have
to
to
them.
pressure
Probably
you
25 questions we
to
haven't gotten.
another time when
Yeah.
it works in your schedule. We hope you'll consider coming back.
Well, it'll
and
make me
we
feel
wish-
busy and do good work at the same time. So,
You
need to-
crushed it.
Yeah.
So
very
good.
kind, very kind.
So good. We will archive the show in totality in 2 spots. First on caringforcreatures.org, Central Virginia's first no-kill animal sanctuary. For more than 30 years, they've been saving the lives of the most at-risk animals on the eastern seaboard and welcoming them to Fluvanna County. Caringforcreatures.org. Please donate there. We will also archive the show on iloveseville.com. This archive will happen today before close of business. We're truly grateful for Ed Clark and him spending his most precious commodity with us, which is his time, and sharing so many fabulous stories. She is a saint as well, Mary Birkholz. Thank you for the people that are saying great show right now. We enjoy connecting with you guys. My name is Jerry Miller. It's the Caring for Creatures show on Thursdays at 3 o'clock on the I Love Seville Network. Enjoy your afternoon.
Yay. It was lovely, I know.
I'll be glad to come back anytime. I mean, I'm serious. I'd love to do it.
I
mean,
think
this
you
is
could
great.
be
I'm astonished at